Yo, I'm glad you like the song. Let's see, how'd it go? Like, don't you ever stop and think sometimes? Could have been us, could have been wonderful, yes, sweet, yes. Found a new love in your life. Could have been us, could have been wonderful, yes, sweet, yes. Something about it don't sit right. Could have been us, could have been wonderful, wonderful, yes. Something like that.
Hey, hello, everyone. Oh, guys, listen, I've got a wonderful guest here today, Ruth. Hello, Ruth. Good to have you
Hi,
here. Ooh,
how are you?
I finally got you here. Oh, goodness.
Well,
I
the time
finally,
difference doesn't help.
yeah, the 6 hours between us, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I've got you here now.
I'm so
And
happy to be here.
I've also got some of your beautiful flowers. Just only a tiny bit though, because I know you've got some amazing plants in that house.
Yes, I am a
Uh,
total plant lady. It's a jungle in here.
mm, is it a jungle? I've got
Yeah.
some myself. But my what do you call them? They're not shrubs. What are they now? Goodness, I forgot the name of them now. The ones that have little thorns in them. What do you call those? Um,
Aloe vera?
Not aloe vera. Never mind. I remember they're
Citrus?
growing babies. They're growing
Oh,
babies. So I've
okay.
replanted them, and there's just more and more coming. Like, I don't know. Am I getting attacked or something? Oh my goodness. Anyway, let's quickly. Um, it was Steve McRae manager. He was definitely first. Ruth, there's like a small competition going on with the people in the chat. I don't know. You are you able to see the chat?
I'm not able to see the chat.
You
It
should you
says,
should you should be able to see it.
okay, oh, okay, I see it now. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. All right,
Yeah.
okay.
There's people in there already. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I
And
see him. I
so
see him.
we've got this little competition that goes on in the chat, and who is first? There's
Okay.
one person who is always, usually always first. He seems to have the main spot, and
Who's that?
that's
Steve?
Steve McRae, manager,
Okay,
seems to always have
I
the main
see him
spot.
up there.
There's competition between two of them. It's Steve McRae, manager, and Ian Davenport. But lately, Ian Davenport, what in Ian Davenport,
I see Ian up there too.
Ian Davenport is in the other part of the world. He's in Australia. So that timing there is a bit, but he does try though. Ian Davenport. He
Ah,
he yeah, yeah.
well,
Uh
hi everyone. It's good that people. I'm sorry I made you wait a little longer. My day didn't end as quickly as I thought it would.
it's absolutely fine. They were quite good. Ian Davenport said, "All good, we understand." Because I left a message saying, "Sorry, had to move the time. Ruth is just leaving work,"
Yeah.
and so yeah, everyone's fine with it. And so it's good to see you and good to have you here. Right. So Steve McRae, good to see you. Ian Davenport, Robin. Hey, Robin. Ruth. Robin's mother is 100 years old.
What? What is
Yes.
the secret? What is the secret to such a long life?
I honestly do not know. But her mom, she's still kicking, she's still going. Oh my goodness. I'm
That's
always so
amazing.
amazed.
That is amazing. 100 years of wisdom.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And then we have Dee Budrow, very busy woman. She's very active in the atheist community here on
Oh, hi,
YouTube.
Dee.
Dee, yes, yes.
We should
Then
be
we
friends on
have
social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we have Junebug. Hey, Junebug, good to see you. Good to see you. Right. So Ian says, ha ha ha, you are fine. Ruth, happy to see you, says Ian.
Happy to see
Right.
you too, Ian.
Oh, got someone special as well. They've got Jerome Robinson. Hello, good to see you as well. I haven't been here in some time. Well, listen, Jerome, you're here now, and that's what matters. Right. Oh, Ruth, you're absolutely welcome once again here.
Thank you. It's really amazing to like be in a place, because I walked away from religion maybe 8, 9 years ago. So to just be finding more and more people who look like me, who are finally getting that, like, this is just not getting us anywhere. It hasn't gotten us anywhere. And actually, we need to start thinking differently. And, for me, the hope is that, of course, like when one of us finds this path, it means that we're not indoctrinating our own children. So hopefully, because that's how religion works. It's a self-recruiting thing, in that you recruit your own kids into it. So the more of us who stop believing in it, then that means that the next generations are going to hopefully be in a place where the Europeans are, because, in Europe, those 100-year-old churches are being turned into pubs or community centers because, younger generation of Europeans don't believe in it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
the very people whose ancestors colonized us and gave us this thing that's useless, they don't, their churches are empty, or their churches are being turned into more productive venues for other things.
Yes. Yes. I completely agree. Completely agree. So Jerome's asking, who is this lady on the right?
On the right.
What country is Ruth from? I'm trying to track the accent. Jerome is very eager.
Okay.
But
So
just
I
he needs
guess I didn't introduce myself, and maybe I
no,
should.
hang on a second. That will come in a second, right? We'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. That's what you're here for, right? So just relax, take your time. Have you got a drink next to you, Ruth?
No, I'm good for now.
You're good. Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so Ruth, before you tell us about yourself, let me tell you about myself,
Okay.
right? Tell you about so I'm over 40 years old. I
So am I.
started this channel um as a result of walking away from Christianity, walking away from religion. YouTube and social media was a very huge part of my deconversion. And when I looked at the demography when it comes to atheism, I found out that there are not many women like you and me who
Nope.
are out here being vocal and just bringing light to atheism. None, there's hardly any. And so this came as a result of just, just being a face for women like you and me. We realize the dangers. We realize the how religion can be poisonous, especially we who were lived in Africa or originally Africans. The impact that has had on our lives, and to be able to just to have the opportunity to work out that religion is nothing but man-made nonsense. So that's why I do what I do. I cover quite a range of subjects, but most of what I do here is about religion and just hearing people's stories of deconversion. That's my passion. I need to talk to people, find out what made you realize that what made you come away. Because at one point, I was thinking, could it be me? Am I the one who is not? Am I the one who is not normal? Because of course the church said that I was going through a phase and I was going through a moment of darkness. right?
And
This
that
is
you're going to come back begging.
oh, I've been told that so many times. I've even been told that my first name, Esther, I need to go and drop that name. It's
Oh,
Christian
I
name.
was also given a biblical name.
Yes.
Funny enough.
Oh, yes. So you're Esther and I'm Ruth. I always
I'm
get told
Ruth.
that my mom said I'm named after one of the only two women in the Bible, Esther and Ruth. So this is nice.
The irony of it is just too
Tell
much.
me about it. Right. So Ruth, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, so I am currently I live in a city called Bellevue. It's in Nebraska, which is right in the middle of the USA. I moved to Nebraska back in 1999 when I was 19. I'm currently 40, I'm turning 43 next month, actually. But I left Zimbabwe. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. And then I went to England I lived in England for about 8 months, close to a year. And then when I was 18, and then I moved here to the US when I was 19. So I've lived in the US longer than I've lived anywhere else. I have two bio kids who are a girl named Cheeto who's 18 and a boy named Simba who's 16. And then I currently also am parenting my two nephews and my niece who are 16, 17, and 19. So 5 teenagers in the house currently. So the accent is a mix of staying in England for a little bit, being born and raised in Zimbabwe, and then being in America now almost 24 years. So that's where that mix is coming from. But I don't know how much of my story you want me to get into, because there's been quite a lot of twists and turns, for me to kind of be where I am today, where I am very openly and very publicly, not just an atheist, but I'm also an out and proud lesbian. So a lot of things, have happened in my life for me to get to this point. So I don't know how much of that story you want to know, or if you actually want to ask questions as we go.
Yes, the chat will have chance to ask questions if they want to. But let me just, did you say you have 5 teenage children at home? Teenagers?
Yes.
5 of them.
Yes, my daughter is a freshman in college, but she is home right now for winter break. So she will be going back she goes to the ASU, which is Arizona State University in Arizona. She is planning to study medicine and be a plastic surgeon. So,
Nice.
So when she goes back, there'll still be 4 left.
Oh my goodness, how do you cope? Oh.
A lot of structure, actually. We have everybody has a chore day. Actually, you'd be surprised. Like, there's no yelling that goes on in our house. Everybody pretty much listens. Everybody pretty much gets along. It's so much easier than you think it is. Like, I'm not stressed because everyone does their own laundry. Everybody mostly cooks their own food, whatever, it's a very independent living type thing. I'm more like the overhead, I don't really micromanage. They're all pretty independent and know how to do things. And I just hold them accountable. And it works out just fine.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I see your pictures on Instagram, and my God, your family, you have such a beautiful family. It's
Thank
amazing.
you.
You see my comments, don't you?
Yeah,
You see
I
me.
know. Yeah.
I'm always liking most of your pictures because I'm just
I
in
know
awe.
that is one thing they have to put up with. I do take a lot of pictures
You
of
do.
them, even though they're teenagers. I do.
Okay, so tell us about your deconversion story. How did you say about 8 years ago, right?
Yes, 8 years ago. And I actually, I will get to that, but someone is like, oh, is asking if I had issues adopting as a lesbian. And actually, I was married to a man in 2003. And 6 years later, left that relationship. I was in an abusive marriage. In fact, my ex-husband tried to have me deported, but I had understood that I was different maybe from the time I was 5 years old, 7 years old, because I remember clearly having crushes on other girls, but I didn't understand that's what it was. When you grow up in a culture where not everyone is represented or you see them, it's really confusing. So even as a teenager, I continued to have crushes on girls, which I didn't understand were crushes. So I did get married, and so my two children are a result of a heterosexual marriage to a man. So I didn't adopt them. But when that marriage ended, I've been out since for 14 years now. I've been out for 14 since my son was 2. Yeah, he's now 16. So I think my kids, they actually don't have a memory of me being with their dad. They only have known me as a lesbian woman. And that's been amazing, actually, for a lot of different reasons. But anyways, I just wanted to answer that because I just saw someone asking that. I didn't want there to be confusion.
Okay.
But as far as how I got to not believing in God, I've always been skeptical. I've always also been very well read, and when you're raised in a culture. So for example, I come from Zimbabwe, where 99.8% of the population is probably religious, and of that 99.8, 97 are Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have it's not like we have some other religions happening. Christianity is the main thing. And why is Zimbabwe that way? We were colonized by the British. The British came to settle in Zimbabwe very early in the 1853 or something like that. So that's how far back British colonization goes back for my specific country. So, and then of course, with colonization came Christianity. Like it was the main mode, like it was the main weapon, right? Like, there's that saying, they gave us Bibles or something like that. They had guns and gave us Bibles, something like that, where if you go back and you study it, there's actually a book which anyone can look up in Google, and it's called How to Make a Negro Christian. And this is one of the books that was used by slave masters, because there was an understanding that in order to enslave people, if you give them a figure that's out there that is supposed to watch over them and watch everything they do, then that person is going to, that population is going to be very easy to manipulate. And actually, they played into our own cultures, where cultures that revered ancestors. All African cultures had some kind of, not religion, but some kind of belief system. So for example, in Zimbabwe, before the British came, we believed in our ancestors. We believed that you could go to like a tree and call out to your ancestor that died, and call out for like rain to come or for whatever it is, right? We had all of these rituals that we did, which was like a belief system we had, and it worked. Obviously, those belief systems had their faults. They were flawed in a lot of ways, but when the white people came in, they took advantage of that. They knew that we had already belief systems in place. But what they did was demonize our belief systems and gave us theirs, in order to manipulate us. Like if you look at the Bible verses that were used to control slaves, there are specific verses like, slaves, obey your master. Beat your slave, but not till death. Just beat them until they're close to death. Literally, like, the Bible was coded by slave masters in order to keep our ancestors in check. And sadly, it was a very clever thing, because look at us. How many decades later is our population still enslaved by religion? Like literally in Zimbabwe, they will close factories to build a church in order to pray for jobs. And this is in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, schools are falling apart. But if you go, you've got mega churches where the pastor owns a helicopter, all of that. So instead of people contributing money towards their kids' schools to improve them and maintain them, they're giving all their money to these self-anointed prophets who become rich. How are they becoming rich? Everyone is giving them money. Like, so if you think about it, like the whole concept of colonizing Africans and giving them religion was a genius. It was a genius theory. Whoever came up with it was a genius, because it's still, I feel like we may be even more enslaved with religion now than we were at the beginning of, slavery.
It's more a mental slavery than physical slavery, isn't it?
It is. But the psychological control is bigger than physical control. If you can control someone psychologically and mentally, you can keep them in place.
You can, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can. There's something that you said. The people who brought this religion to Africa, right? Never mind, some people will tell you, oh, but Christianity began in Africa. Oh, it began in Ethiopia. Yes, if it began in Ethiopia, it stayed in Ethiopia. It didn't move from Ethiopia, right? Until these people came along, the colonizers, right? They came with the religion and came with the goal to take over the lands. And there are still videos till today where these people go into communities, have a big photo in their hands, photo of Jesus, the white Jesus, blue eyes, blonde hair Jesus.
Well, white people are still going on missionaries to convert, brown and black people in developing nations. Today, you still have white Christians going on missions for the purpose of conversion. Today, as in, we're almost in 2023. So it really hasn't stopped. And so, but what it is like, if we are not, I talk about this a lot. It's like, if we are not reading as Black people, if we're not writing. So for example, I've authored 2 books, but I've collaborated on, if we're not writing, if we're not reading, if the only books we read are the Bible or the books written by T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, Joel Osteen, we're never going to come out of this like cloud of kind of like, it's mental chains, really. It's like, and what religion does is it really stops critical thinking. And it's interesting. So for example, my country is such a case study for what religion does to people. So when I was growing up, Zimbabwe was the most prosperous African country. We were the most literate.
Was it
Yes, it
now?
was.
Ruth, Ruth,
Yes,
Ruth.
yes.
Come
So
on,
in the
Ruth. Come on,
listen,
Ruth.
no,
Come
no, no.
on.
Listen to me.
Come
In the
on.
in the
That's what
70s, in the
that's what you were
70s, and
told. Are you sure
no,
it's not
no,
Nigeria?
listen, you can Google this. It's out there. Like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Zimbabwe was known as the breadbasket of Africa.
Oh yeah.
We literally, our Zimbabwean dollar had the same value as the American dollar. And then you have to remember,
Wow.
yeah, so here's something the British did do that was actually good for Zimbabwe. Their education system had to match ours. So for example, when I went to high school in Zimbabwe, my cousin was born and raised in England. We wrote the same final exams. We wrote our exams all came from Cambridge. So that's why Zimbabweans were the most literate. I think we still might be the most literate Africans, even though our country has had a constant decline for 20 years. But anyways, if you look at when things were good, when I was growing up and things were good, when jobs were plenty, nobody hardly went to church. Yes, some people went to church, but like, for example, I don't remember as a teenager in high school going to church and ever discussing religion unless you were taking divinity, which is a religious class. Religion was not part of our lives because everything was good. And, we had movie theaters on weekends. People went to watch games, packed the stadiums. We just lived life the way that people in Europe live life. You know what I'm saying? Life was not at all about church or religion or God or anything like that, because jobs were plenty. Education was at its highest. Healthcare, we had amazing healthcare. And then, of course, we had, the dictator Mugabe, who stayed in power too long.
Yes.
And, the mistake he made, of course, was when he started doing the grabbing farms from white farmers and giving them to people with no knowledge of farming, with no funds to, so that's when things started going wrong. But anyways, since things have started going wrong, you now have theaters. So places that were like movie theaters or places for entertainment, those have been turned to churches. Now Zimbabweans are going to church Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, Wednesday prayer, Thursday. So it's really the opium of the masses. So because people are so desperate and hopeless, everyone clamors to God. But when things are going good and the economy is functioning and God is not a big deal. So that's how that it's almost like belief in God requires suffering, right? And that's how it worked for slaves too. Like, yes, you're suffering now, but if you pray and you believe enough in the afterlife, you won't be a slave anymore, And so that's why you notice that if you look at countries that have high rates of poverty, if you look at Middle Eastern countries, right? Afghanistan, Iran, all of those. Yes, everyone is going to pray 6 times a day because life is miserable and hopeless. If you look at the happy places where the economy, the secular classes, countries, so I'm talking Iceland, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Japan, you will notice that people don't need to pray or believe in God because the economy works and things are going well, So there's also a suffering component that is needed for people to believe. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Oh, I can't hear you.
Never mind. Sorry about that. I was
okay.
I was putting on the candles here, so I didn't want the lighting to make all these lamps. Okay, but Ruth, you didn't go into details about your deconversion.
All right, I'm sorry.
What exactly was it?
There's so much to say. So I when I came out, so what happened was I was the first person in my family to move to America. So I came here at 19. And then a short while later, my aunt who had raised me from the time I was 10, because my mom actually completed suicide when I was 5. And then my sister died that same year. So I was raised
Awesome.
as an orphan and raised by all of my mother's siblings. So my aunt, who raised me from the time I was 10 till I was 18, came here with all of her 3 kids as well. So I helped them come here and helped other family members move here as well. And then I told you I got married to a man and all of that, and I was doing the religion thing and the expected thing. Everyone is very proud because also I was married to a white man. So, oh my God, that's even more glamorous, you
You,
know.
you hit the big time.
Yes,
You hit
yes,
the
yes. And
jackpot.
then so when I finally realized that I was miserable, I was basically living a pretentious life, right, in this marriage, and I walked away from that. What happened was, as you can guess, I was the very family I brought here were now praying for me because I was all of a sudden so, so demonic and so evil, because first of all, I'm just now accepting that I'm not a straight woman, and I'm miserable living this, pretentious life. So there are prayers held for me and all of this. And then, so it didn't make sense because, first of all, how do I go from I'm such an exemplary daughter,
Awesome.
right? Like I brought
Yeah.
everyone, I had gone to school, I'd put myself through nursing school, all of this, I'd bought a house, I'd done all of this, I was a great mother. All of a sudden, I want to end my miserable marriage and I want to come out and be my true self. All of a sudden, I was going to be a terrible mother. All of a sudden, my kids are going to grow horns. Oh, how does that happen by me just saying, actually, I'm not happy in this marriage. I'm not happy. I want to be happy. And for me, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I lost a parent via suicide. And, I now believe that my mom probably had a mental health issue, maybe bipolar or something, which is a whole subject because in Africa, we don't yet recognize mental illness. But either way, she got to a point she was so unhappy in life. And I think for me, I've had time to sit and reflect on that and be like, I don't want to live a life that makes me miserable, So by choosing myself, that made me a pariah within my family and my community, And so when that happened, I was just like, something is really wrong with this belief system. Something is really wrong with the fact that like I can literally be this person who's helped everyone come here, who's done all of these things. And by just wanting to be honest and live a more authentic life, I got death threats from Zimbabwe.
Oh no.
For coming out as a lesbian, yes.
Oh wow.
Literally. Yes, death threats, actual death threats. Like, so I was like, if religion makes people this insane, I mean, so that's where like I think the clock really shifted, but it didn't take until I was dating I had a girlfriend who was an atheist, and she just was like, she didn't get it. She's like, why do you, even though I tried to kind of like be okay with religion by like going to an LGBTQ church, a more open church, a more, you know what I'm saying? And I thought like maybe that was better, but then my girlfriend at the time, who was Australian, was just like, why do you hold on? She's like, everything about who you are, it doesn't make sense that you then still believe, so she started to kind of just, push and prod, like, and that's when what I did was I decided to read the entire Bible twice.
Okay.
I read.
Ooh.
You,
Reading the Bible.
If you read the Bible, yes, you will be like, this is the most violent book. It's like a psychopath wrote that book because there are so many things. And then, what's crazy is like, we look at cultures like what's happening in Afghanistan right now, where they've barred women from going to school. we look at those society where they are literally like, you can be jailed or killed for not wearing a hijab. We look at them as if they're crazy, but guess what? Those instructions are found in the Quran. They are not crazy. They're actually following the holy book as it is. So if Christians were to actually follow the things written in the Bible, we would be cutting off our children's hands for lying or stealing. We would be marrying off our daughters to old men. I mean, it's crazy town, you know. And the only reason I think people can believe in the Bible is because they're only fed the verses that are, if you read the Bible front to back as if you're reading just a research book, you would chuck it away. You would throw it away because it's crazy. The things that are in the Bible are the most violent, the most vile, the most, you know, everything that we put people in prisons for in society can be found in the Bible. Can support most of those things, whether it's incest, whether it's rape, whether it's slavery, whether it's, you know. So after I did that, I read, and I had highlighters. So that's what I did, is like, I read this whole entire book and I was like, what? No, you know. So, and then, I identified as a humanist, which I still am. I'm an atheist humanist, meaning that I believe that it's actually the good of human beings. Like we have the power to change everything, right? We have the power to be good. We have the power to support others or each other in a positive way. We have,
we don't believe in an afterlife.
Yeah, but also, you know, if you know, and then I started to just kind of really see, like, okay, so why is it that the most religious countries are also the poorest or have the most violence well, if something is happening in my life, right? Let's say I'm a bad person. Let's say I'm stealing from my job, and I just go, the devil. It's the devil is making me do it, or other people around me are going, oh yeah, I think there's a demonic thing. I never have to take accountability for anything, right? If there's a devil to blame for all the bad things that happen in life, then I don't have to be accountable. If my kid is doing things that don't make sense and I'm going, oh yeah, no, it's the devil that's making my child, it means that I don't have to hold my child accountable, right?
Blame is on the devil.
Yes, right. So in countries where they don't just, and it's so crazy. So like, for example, in my country, because the economy is bad. So let's say our roads are not maintained, right? So there's a lot of bus accidents, a lot of deaths, a lot of road accidents that kill people. Guess what? Zimbabweans really believe that was God's plan. They don't understand that there's a correlation between having potholes, you know, and accidents and early death. And they don't understand that in countries where the roads are paved and cars are maintained, people don't die you don't go to a funeral every other month. They think it's really God's time, and it's kind of frustrating when you live in the real world and in reality, and you understand that actually there's a method to everything, and there's a real reason why everything is happening. You know, it's not just God or the devil. There's a real reason for every little thing that happens. It's crazy then to look back at people who literally, like, people can be going to funerals every month and they really think that, oh, this is God's plan. God had you know, if it's a child, then yeah, that was meant to be an angel. And it's like, but children are not dying in, you know, in England from bus accidents or whatever, from a lack of treatment of like diabetes or something like that, you know. So that, you know, I can see how, you know, there's that saying that says ignorance is bliss. And I can see how, I guess, having something like that you can just blame on things, or then makes you not have to be accountable for, you know, whatever it is, whether it's processing the grief or putting something in place to fix the problem. You know what I'm saying? But that's also, it's kind of like this continuous cycle, right? Because if we blame God for the road accidents, then we don't understand that maybe our government should have, you know, someone in place to actually be like managing our roads and fixing our roads so that we have less road accidents. Or maybe that like our police should actually be giving tickets for not wearing seatbelts so that we have you know, if you can just blame it on God and it being on God's time, then nothing. And that's why we stay poor. That's why we continue to have the low life expectancies. That's why nothing changes, because there's no accountability. We are not accountable as human beings if we just blame, if everything is on God's time and it's God's this or the devil this, you know. So that's why nothing changes. That's why like in Zimbabwe, they're building bigger and bigger churches for prayer, and yet the economy gets worse and worse. You know, there's nothing gets better, but no one connects the dots because everyone is living in this fantasy world of like, you know. And also just think about just the concept of like, you want to live a better life after this life, so it's okay for you to live a horrible life now because another life, like what?
You know, saying that, I was talking to a friend yesterday. He also is from Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And he lost his brother in a car accident, right? He had just finished school, had come home only 2 weeks. Him and 5 other young men died in this car accident.
It's so common. That's an every week thing. There's a big accident that kills lots of people weekly in my country because and people just go, oh yeah, it was God's time. Oh yeah, you know, there's no, you know what I'm saying? It's madness. Yeah, it's really just really sad to be, you know. And I think everyone who walks away from religion has that experience where it's almost like I'm on the outside and I'm looking in, and you're just like, it's like a train wreck, you know. It's just kind of like watching people and going, this is and it's, I have a story to share about, so I told you that when I came out, I was being prayed for. My aunt, in fact, set up this prayer meeting one day because
Ruth, let me interrupt. You've got to be specific because you seem to have 2 coming out stories, right?
I do.
Number
well,
one,
yes.
You had to come out as a lesbian. That was your first coming out. Then you had to then come out as an atheist, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
when next you say I came out, be specific.
Okay.
Which of the outings?
So the prayers they were praying for me after I came out as a lesbian.
Right.
But what's interesting is that, like, of course, like, I remember everyone who was at that prayer meeting. I actually walked out of that prayer meeting, and some woman was yelling that I will be back begging God. This is 14 years ago. I'll be back begging God for forgiveness and stuff. And then, you know, time does an interesting thing. So 14 years have gone by. I've seen these people raise kids and how their kids have turned out. I've raised kids and I've seen how my kids have turned out. And guess what?
Oh, tell me.
There's no comparing the results because I've actually purposely parented my children. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've just done prayers for their children, and who our children are 14 years later, you know, their kids, a lot of them rebellious, teenage pregnancy, or because it doesn't work. It doesn't work to be praying and actually not doing the work of actually like, you know. So it's so crazy because like I will see my friends or parents who are like, oh, I'm praying that my children behave this way, and I'm like, No, you need to talk to your children in order for your children to behave a specific way. You need to actually, instead of having a prayer, you have to have a conversation with your child about the expected behavior. Or you cannot just you can't pray for safety. I have to talk to my son about consent and what's appropriate for him to do and not do. I have to talk to my daughters about, I can't just pray and then think that means that they're going to be safe or they're going to behave a certain way. You know what I'm saying? And actually, I don't know if you heard about this. There are now a lot of African kids, like kids with African parents, like in the UK, and who are now writing about the fact that they see their mothers treating the pastor of the church like he's God. They don't communicate with them. They don't show them affection. They don't do this. They don't do. So even our kids that we're having, in the diaspora are picking up on this bullshit of like putting, church figures above family, having closer relationships with, you're spending more time at church. You don't spend time with your kids, You know what I'm saying? I'm close to my kids because I actually have a relationship with my kids. I don't have a relationship with Jesus, but I have a relationship with my children, and that's and it shows in who my children are and how they carry themselves in the world.
You become more intentional, right? You become more proactive in raising these kids. You're not leaving your children on a Sunday in the church
and then you spend all day at church.
Yeah. The kids are off there. You don't know what they're getting
doing.
And you are there doing your own thing. You're probably involved cleaning the church, singing in the choir somewhere, doing one thing, and everything you do in church is usually free. You don't get paid for what you do.
And then they don't understand why their kids are so lost or why their kids are behaving, joining gangs or You are not actually there to raise your kids. You spend more time, like if you look at the amount of time, especially African women spend dedicated to religion. African women don't have any interests or passions or hobbies of their own. My kids have grown up seeing me travel, seeing me fish and camp. And guess what? They also have their own passions and hobbies because they can see that this is the way that you're supposed to do life. If all they ever saw was me spending time at church and they would also just be like empty vessels who'd have no idea that life, actually to be happy in life, is to be able to have things that you love to do, So it actually religion really robs people away from so much intentional living of life, because it's just, and it's also, it's recycled. Like, listen to a sermon and then go to church next week. It's the same message, just in it's nothing new.
Not only is it recycled, but what are the chances that what you discussed with your pastor or preacher in private is then used as the subject of the conversation on the pulpit the next day when the pastor is up there, right? He brings out his Bible, comes with his fancy suit and everything, right? There's only so much he can get from the Bible. He has to resort to some story or another, and what you will find.
And also, like, because there's such blind faith in church leaders. This is why churches carry the highest insurance for sexual assaults, because that's where children are most likely to get sexually assaulted. Because guess what? Parents believe that this youth pastor, because they think that people are gods. Like if you look African churches where there's even less oversight, the stories that come out of like, do you see these crazy videos of like these African pastors? Now they're washing people in front of the church naked.
Listen,
or they are making glass, or they are.
Ruth,
I mean, what?
Ruth, my channel, I cover the crazies in Africa. So yes, that particular video, what you're talking about, it's on my channel somewhere, about this pastor who was bathing this. Okay, actually, while you're talking, let me go find that video.
No, but like that is
bathe
No, but like
women in front of the church.
If you think about the fact that there's a room full of people and somehow everyone in that room has been convinced by one person that this is a normal and okay thing to do, that people, adults, men and women, are willing to strip naked in front of everybody and be washed. Like, what if someone was on drugs and they did that? Like, we would be like, oh my goodness, that person is a druggie. But when it's religion, we don't, it's almost like, it's crazy how like those of us who can look at it and see the insanity of it can see it, but the people that are in there, everything, they can explain it away. They'll tell you that you just don't believe, you just don't know, and you're like, this is insane that people are perfectly okay with, abuse, but them being abused, in the name of their belief. So it's kind of really sad sometimes to watch. It goes from being like funny, you can't even laugh about something like that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just such a different level of like madness, And I don't know why as Africans, we have to be performative in our beliefs. So for example, there are some, I know that secularism is growing in America. I think about 63% now of Americans say they really don't go to church or believe in it. There's still a percentage that does. But when they go, church is not about miracles and performances and I'm going to cast. Why, as Africans, does everything have to be so performative and all of this? I don't, it doesn't make sense. So, maybe if like religion had been kept to where it's just a hobby. Oh yeah, you found the video.
I did. Okay, so it's only 2 minutes, this video, so I'll just play it.
All right.
Action. Okay, this is what people started saying was that this is actually acting, but I don't know if this is this. I honestly could not tell you what on earth is going on here. There's been many videos.
This is not the only example. There are so many crazy, outrageous like I've seen videos of a pastor walking in and everybody kneeling on their knees on the floor. Yes. I've seen, I mean, just kind of like, like people have lost their minds, right? In this entire belief. And then when you see the number of how many pastors of churches, even here in America, end up being arrested because, we've got like the pastor Eddie Longs, this was the pastor who he preached against homosexuality. Meanwhile, he was sleeping with all the young men, I mean, and people still believe like it. So it's like, what proof do you need that like, maybe there's something not quite right about, the things that you believe in.
Let me play a bit of this one, right?
Okay.
Now the roll pants. Men perceive the quabonte, now go for the cassette, was soft one in the road where your pants, men penisa. What you say? It's why one more back, overall pants, no soft penny, may you what I asked your mom. Hallelujah. Amen. It is Leviticus and someone said your kind. What's the other what's the other? Why are they one in me? More than let's after we say the direction we say, we say, you would be in area. Millions of penny me could garrow. Now, what's it? Amen. What you say? Some we say so for me. Now, one yes, that direction we are. And for say, and one free me, and one free me, one free me. Now, only something free me, and I'm free me. And that's me free the panting. Yeah, woman, sister, and some way say, because I said, we be actually. And now, no software be material, no preaching to woman, put yourself, and your friends, yes, so software can't wine. No preaching to woman, put yourself, and software.
He just puts his hand there. Let's see what else. There's more people coming. Let's see. He's actually shaving. He's shaving.
You can see, like, In America, that pastor would be arrested. That's clearly a violation of someone's bodily autonomy.
No, why would he be arrested? These are adults. There's no children here. They're not under any compulsion to do this. They've chosen to do this. This is a thing of choice.
Yeah, it's crazy making. There's no kind of making sense of it. It's just
Ruth, you talk about America, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are the likes of Warren Jeffs. Is it Warren?
Oh
Jeff?
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's the one. He's in prison for like life, I think, because he was marrying 12-year-olds. He was even his own daughters. Just crazy. Yeah. So cults, like we call them cults here, right? It's a cult. But religion, honestly, like that, it's just become a cult. Like no matter what church people go to, it's really based on it doesn't make sense. We should not. We need to change the way that we're raising kids. We need to be directing our kids towards education, reading research-based things, kind of just existing life in reality, like just living life today. Like, what is my life today? And face everything and be accountable. Another big thing that I think I realized is that we come from cultures that don't believe in therapy to heal our traumas. And I will explain on that. So I told you that, I lost my mom to suicide when I was little, and I was raised as an orphan, and as you can imagine, and I was an African orphaned girl. So what ended up happening was, in every home I was in, I was treated like the maid. I was, you know what I'm saying? I was left out of things. My birthdays were not celebrated. You know how we come from cultures that think that a child's humanity is different from the other. It would be like, right now, I told you that I have 5 teens, 2 are my bio kids, and then I have 2 nephews. It would be like me treating my nephews and niece entirely different from the way that I treat my kids. This is the culture we come from. Somehow putting the value of my kids' humanity above that of my nephews and my niece, as if they are not all human beings. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I'm saying this to say I had a lot of trauma as an adult. And I didn't even know what trauma was until I was in a relationship with my first girlfriend, and I would do very self-sabotaging behavior. You know what I'm saying? Like and one day she said to me, she's like, you have a lot of trauma because you've never been to therapy for all your childhood trauma. And I was like, Black people don't have trauma. and she was like, wait, your mother died when you were 5, horribly and tragically. Your dad never came to claim you. You were treated differently in every home that you were raised in. You married someone who tried to have you deported. You don't think you have trauma? And so when she left because she couldn't deal with my behaviors, that was the first time that I sought therapy. And it was the first time that I actually when you're traumatized, every age you were when something terrible happened, you still have that person inside of you. So for example, I had the 5-year-old little girl whose mother died and no one explained anything. You know what I'm saying? I had the 5-year-old whose sister died. All of these little girls that are hurt, that things happened to them and no one explained anything. And I'm an adult, and I still have all of those little girls in me that all these things happened to, right? And it wasn't until I started going to therapy and started talking to a therapist that, oh my God, all of these things started coming up. And I think because we come from cultures that don't yet understand that cognitive behavioral therapy is a way to actually, a long time ago, before we were colonized, we had things in place in our culture that address trauma. So for example, in my particular culture, so they do several rituals. Like, so for example, someone dies. Let's say your grandfather murdered somebody. There had to be a ritual where you had to make peace as a family with the family of this murdered person, because they believed that if that wasn't fixed, the kids, us as the grandchildren of this man who murdered someone, were going to be haunted by this person. And that's what literal trauma is. That's what trauma is. If you don't address something happening, you know what I'm saying? You're going to deal. We used to have drum circles where you could dance and talk about things. We no longer have those kind of communal things in place that helped us process trauma, So now we just live in societies where people think that they can just pray, but it doesn't work, right? But anyways, once I started going to therapy, I understood why we have, so for example, I have an aunt who, when she prays, she still cries about the same things that she was praying and crying for 10 years ago, right? Because it's not, it's never solved. As opposed to me, when I went to therapy 10 years ago, I resolved those issues. I got over everything that I went to therapy for 10 years later is something that I've made peace with. Those things no longer affect me. I'm not still dealing with that. And that's the difference that, going to therapy and kind of treating our traumas do. But if you live in a culture where no one is treating your trauma, you are going to be praying out to God and crying, and it's because nothing ever gets resolved. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so the same hurts, the same pains, the same brokenness just kind of stays and stays. And then, in other cultures, well, it's happening in our cultures too, where because of trauma, people become drug addicts, but then when people are addicted to religion, we don't connect the dots. Like the religious devotee has the same trauma as the heroin or meth addict. They're just coping with it. Yeah, it's just a different kind of drug.
So there's a question in chat from Steve McRae Manager. He says, can your guest explain a little bit about what she means by self-sabotage? And then when you answer that question, I'm going to show exactly what happens in Africa when people have mental health issues. What happens to them? What happens when, for a lot of countries in Africa don't recognize the mental health. What is that? What is mental health? Are you mad? They tell you, get on with it. Just, there's nothing like.
But remember, we used to have things in place to recognize mental health. But because those tools were taken and we were told it's just demonic. Oh, yes. So you've got people that are suffering from mental health. They have mental health issues, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression. They're taken to these pastors and they're literally abused. Some of them are told that they need exorcism, they need this, they need that. When people need medication and therapy,
But Ruth, how can you blame them? The book that they're reading from, the Savior of the world, who was also God, Jesus, he met a man on his way to wherever he was going. And this man was out there, clearly had what we would consider a mental health problem, right? Because he's out there in the wild. He's, just people are not sure what's wrong with him, right? He's breaking everything. And Jesus sees this man. Even Jesus, the Savior of the world, did not recognize mental
illness. That is very true. But before I forget, I will answer.
Jesus starts talking to the demons in the man, even sends the demons into the pigs, kills all the pigs.
Oh, yes.
And walks away, right? So if their Savior couldn't recognize mental health, you think they can? You think they... Come on now.
No. Yeah. But anyways, I'm going to answer what I meant by self-sabotage. So a lot of us, if you have never confronted your childhood traumas, which no one is free from trauma. Everybody has experienced trauma, no matter how good the family you come from is, no matter, your race, culture, any of that. Trauma is just intrinsic to being a human being, right? And trauma differs, right? There are kids who were starved, beaten, and that's their highest level of trauma. But there are kids who are just yelled at, and that's their highest levels of trauma. So trauma is very individual, right? So, and what happens when we're traumatized is that, and we never confront it or heal it or, kind of reflect or talk to someone about it, we become adults who are projecting our pain. But we have no idea that that's what we're doing. We have no idea that we're projecting, the pain from a different time when things happen to us. So when I say I had self-sabotaging behaviors, what I mean was I had found this person who loved me, who was in love with me, who loved my kids, who took care of them like they were her own kids. I would go out and cheat on her. I would go out, so anything good that I had, I would destroy it. But that was coming from my own inner pain and turmoil. But I was just projecting it on her. And for some reason, and this is being studied, for some reason, we project our traumas, our childhood traumas the most on our romantic relationships. This is why women are killed by men in romantic relationships all the time. Because this man was probably hit by somebody or his stepfather or someone when he was a little boy, when he was powerless. He had no power. He's still angry and still holding on to that. But now he has power. The person who actually tries to love him, that's who's going to suffer for that. So that's what self-sabotaging is. Some people self-sabotage through drug use. Some people self-sabotage. So any negative behavior that stops you from having positive and good things in your life, positive and good relationships in your life, that's self-sabotaging, right? It's like you have a job that pays you well. You stop going to work on time. You're self-sabotaging, because you're eventually going to get fired. So any behavior that actually works against you that you're doing is a self-sabotaging behavior. And a lot of those behaviors really lie in our unresolved stuff, our unresolved traumas, things that happen to us that we haven't confronted or dealt with. It's just a projection of something that we haven't dealt with within ourselves.
So you become your own worst enemy.
Yes. And sadly, because so many people are unhealed, so many people have never actually been told that there's something called trauma and they have it. People are unaware that they're traumatized. They think they're fine, So there is so many people self-sabotage all the time. It's just part of, and this is why we also have to read books, right? We have to, and now there are books being written about trauma and how, and I can suggest a few of those. There's one called It Didn't Start With You that talks about, just how.
Sorry, what did you call it? It didn't start with you?
It didn't start with you.
Just drop something. It didn't start with you. Okay, I'll type it in.
Yeah,
chat.
that's a good research-based book on trauma. There's another one that's a favorite of mine that I would think about. But there's so many. I mean, there are a lot of psychologists and doctors that have started to do the work on writing about trauma. I don't know if you've heard of. There's a pediatrician that has come up with something called the ACE score. Yes, which is a set of questions that ask, did you grow up seeing your mother being beaten? Do you have a parent in jail? And according to how you answer, the higher you have yeses, you notice that you have higher rates of sickness, incarceration. So trauma directly affects who we become in life. The things that happen to us absolutely impact, who we become. So I think religion in our culture, especially as Africans, because we haven't moved on to, Western cultures understand now that, there's this thing, and they found ways to deal with, what do we do when someone is traumatized? What do we do when someone has a mental illness? We haven't done that. So we're still holding on to this old way of thinking, just like witchcraft, by the way, have witchcraft because we haven't found the tools to actually deal with these everyday human problems that we have. The tools that actually work. But they're out there. We're just not reading, or we're not being educated about them.
Okay, let me saying that, I'm just going to play this video just to highlight what happens with people when they have a mental health crisis, when let's have a quick look at this.
He's been championing the cause of better mental health care in Kenya for more than 30 years, working tirelessly to reduce the stigma that plagues his patients.
Stigma is a product of ignorance. If you don't talk about important issues, then they get buried under the carpet.
In an unaccepting society, he's done the unthinkable.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome.
A television talk show raising the issues.
Frankly speaking, because I spoke frankly, as my name is, and my interlocutors, my patients, spoke very frankly indeed.
This week on African Voices, we meet Dr. Frank Njenga, Kenya's leading psychiatrist, combating the stigma of mental illness, pushing the limits of understanding.
There is no health without mental health.
The ratio of psychiatrists in Kenya to the population is dismal. One psychiatrist to every 500,000 people.
Wow.
It's impossible for Frank Njenga to even begin to see all those who need mental health care.
Wow.
It's a major challenge, but it's a challenge that very sadly is spread right across the whole of the African continent. In fact, ironically, Kenya is only behind South Africa and perhaps Egypt in the ratios of psychiatrists that are available per population. There are countries in Africa where there is not even a single psychiatrist to 5 or 6 million people.
Wow. Just wow.
In Kenya, the only public psychiatric hospital that offers relief to traumatized.
Where there is not
Oh,
even a
sorry.
single psychiatrist to 5 or 6 million.
I was trying to stop it and press, but Ruth, can you see one psychiatrist to 5 or 6 million people? Can you see why they would go to church? Can you see why they would go to the mosque?
Yes. Yeah. I get the hopelessness of how things are, but at the same time, if resources are not being directed to the right places, so for example, like I mentioned before, if everyone in let's say a community, right? You've got a community and you've got a school, right? So like, for example, here, my kids' school have a fundraiser, right? Because they're trying to build the computer lab, right? They have a fundraiser, they have a goal for 60,000. Within 3 days, parents have already given money and they've met that goal. It happens very quickly, right? Now, you take a community in Zimbabwe, right? Which all of our schools are failing, right? That community, if you say to the parents, hey, let's raise money to build a computer lab for our children, nobody is going to give. But then you go to Sunday and people will take their last $5 to put in the collection basket for the pastor who already is driving a Lamborghini and already. So it's like you can't fix the problem if resources, it's not, yes, Africa is poor, but really some of the way that Africa is poor actually doesn't add up, right? Like, for example, I will give a comparative example to America. Here, African Americans are supposedly poor as well, right? But if I go to the mall on the weekends, the same people who are categorized as poor are coming out with bags of Jordans from the shoe store that cost $300 a piece. But the same people can't have supplies, school supplies for their children, and school open. So it's a choice where the money is going. It's you're poor when it comes to this, but you're not poor when it comes to this. And it's the same issue we have in Africa. Yes, there's poverty, yes, but resources could be better distributed, and if people in Zimbabwe put the same amount of money they put in the church basket every Sunday just for one of the popular pastors into fixing the main hospital, that hospital would have beds that patients can actually sleep on. That hospital would. So it's frustrating because yes, people are hopeless and people are poor, but actually because you can see where if resources and money is directed to a specific pastor, you can see how wealthy they become. They live in a mansion, they drive $1 million cars, but then there's a school in the same neighborhood where kids don't have chairs to sit on, where the pool has been shut down for you. So it's not that people are poor; they're poor in their thinking. Because
can I just add something here? Yes, I agree that they're poor in their thinking, but I think it's deliberate in a lot of ways. Like I'm going to use Nigeria as an example.
Okay.
Nigeria has no reason why anyone should be poor. That's a country that has all the natural resources it needs, right, to enrich the whole 200 and something odd million people in that country. But over 50% of the population are living below the poverty line, right? Now, what you would find is that the leaders of this country are religious people. They're either Muslims or they are Christians. The vice president at the present moment is a pastor in a church, right? So the people who are fighting for the separation of church and state, right? In Nigeria, church and state, mosque and state, they're all intertwined. There is no separation. So recently there was a problem of security problems. People were getting kidnapped because the poor people, these are poor people, they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They start kidnapping people and tell you produce so and so money and we will release your lots of theft going on, lots of just the country just started to suffer all these really just things started to happen, right? And now everyone's looking up to the government to do something. Guess what the vice president said? The vice president said, now is the time for the country to pray to God, to commit it to God's hands, right? So
but this is the same. It's the same master-slave tactic. This is when slaves wanted to uprise, the masters would literally again use again, we're going to defer to God. We're going to So it's
yeah. So when the one you're looking up to do something for you is telling you to go look up to God, right? Meanwhile, when he has a problem, when he's sick, he's on the next plane, the next private jet off to the UK to go and be treated. His kids are not even in Nigeria. All his kids are in the best of schools that in the world, right? And these people, what they do, they take the resources from these countries, they buy houses in the US, they buy houses in the UK, right? So, but then they tell the poor people, they tell the poor masses, you go and look up to God. Right. And what you would find is that these religious leaders, you find that most of the preachers, most of the pastors, the imams, right, they're all one and the same. Because when it's come election time, you find the preachers, they're preaching about who's going to win the next election, who the people should vote for, right? You find the Adeboyes and the Oyedepos, the patriarchs of Christianity. You find them always pictures of them and the president.
I do want to. You just reminded me of something. There is one African country that has made, and it's literally the country that's progressing right now, and that's Rwanda. And Rwanda,
Right. That
Rwanda,
man.
yes. So Rwanda not only, has the, and we can debate about whether the president is a dictator or not. But I think there's good and evil dictators.
Yes.
But anyways, first of all, he's put people in power that have been educated outside of Rwanda. You know what I'm saying? So he's made, because these people, he knows that understand different ways systems and economies work. So he's put people in power that are Rwandans, but the Rwandans who got their education from Harvard or stuff like that. But also he's done this thing where he's closed down churches. You cannot operate a church unless you hold a degree, an actual, not a doctored one, not a, you know what I'm saying? And then so it's not surprising that Rwanda is like one of the leading countries in the world when it comes to just recycling. Like they have a day where the country's off and people pick up trash. They've stopped using plastics. They're manufacturing. So it can be done, right? Like just watching Rwanda and what Rwanda has been able to do in a short space of time. But then again, you've got a leader who's saying, no, the religious thing, it can't be out of control, Also, what are we doing? Who are we putting in power? I think the minister of technology is like a 19, 20 something year old, because he's like, no, we have to put the people that have, that know what they're doing. So that's just, so it's not all bleak. They are definitely, Rwanda, for example, is a leading country in just like having a leader who is really kind of like addressing the needs of the country and putting people in power, and also, curtailing this religion thing, making sure it just doesn't, I swear in Zimbabwe, like depending on the week, there's a new favorite pastor, prosperity gospel that everyone is flocking to. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it doesn't make any sense, but when I was growing up, it was like about education, It's like, it's almost like Zimbabweans have forgotten that there's higher education. It's all about,
Oh no, but what do you need that higher education for when your main goal is to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, right? A lot of these religions actually discourage people from going to higher institutions because they feel like that's the devil's ground.
Yeah,
right?
well, this is, and that brings us to countries like Afghanistan and Iran now literally banning women from going to school, literally banning girls from an education, because according to their holy books, what good is an educated woman? You know what I'm saying? So it's just, it's kind of, and it's interesting to me because just like Nigeria, Zimbabwe, if you look at Iran back in the 60s, women were wearing mini skirts. Women didn't have to cover up. So it's like religion is becoming more and more, just like, back in the 70s in Zimbabwe, church was such a, very much a, people went to church, but like church wasn't like everybody goes to church, and church is the thing that everybody's doing. And this, like, it's so hard to even just have other Zimbabweans as friends on social media, because like I want to like people's posts, but if every post you make is, I thank the Lord that I am another birthday, I think, and I'm just like, I'm like, tell me about you. Like, I want to know who, you know what I'm saying? Like, or, let's say your kid goes into surgery, your kid comes, the first thing you're doing is thanking
Praise the Lord.
Wait. What about the surgeon that went to school for 12 years?
God used his hands. God used his hands. Ruth, let me finish playing this video and then we can get back to let's see. Okay, here we go.
In Kenya, the only public psychiatric hospital that offers relief to traumatized patients is Mathare Hospital. But the hospital is ill-equipped and underfunded. The government says it does not have sufficient resources to provide better mental health care. But a recent government report showed that $3
Wow.
billion in government funds had been stolen in just 1 year.
Wow.
That's enough money to fund Kenya's medical services for a decade.
It's a horrible, horrible indictment on what we have done. But the truth and the reality is that very little has been done systematically and deliberately, either by government or by ourselves, to bring up the level of mental health in this part of the world.
Some people might say that, on the scale of things to do, food for the people, basic health care in terms of HIV/AIDS and other serious matters, democratic institutions. Some people might say that psychiatry should be kind of way down the list. Should it be?
Some people will say that, and many people will be able to justify that. Until you give them a few numbers, until you tell the people what it costs to neglect the mental welfare of the people. For example, 25 to 30% of all consumers of primary medical facilities go to consume those services primarily because of mental health needs.
1 in 4.
1 in 4. The reality, of course, is that they get unnecessary blood, urine, and stool examinations at great expense and great wastage. And therefore, whereas you are not expending those funds for mental health services, you are wasting them because you're neither doing physical services nor doing mental health services. So 25% of your work is wasted, number two. Number two, children who are the product of depressed mothers, as an example, are less frequently immunized, gain weight less, thrive worse, have diarrheal diseases more frequently, and do worse in school.
Why should policymakers care about mental health?
There is no health without mental health. And there is no economy, and this has been shown in all parts of the world, that in fact, there is a relationship between good mental health and productivity.
Wow.
And the converse is also true. Those people who are mentally unwell do not go to their farms, do not go to factories, do not go to work, and therefore a mentally unwell society is economically unproductive.
Oh, wow.
And therefore, one of the strategies for improving productivity in any society, including
a mentally unwell society, is an unproductive society. And when you have a society that has religion at the top of its list, religion, unfortunately, you will have a lot of people who are mentally unwell.
Oh yeah, and another thing to mention here, worth mentioning, is that there are a lot of mental illnesses that actually manifests through religiosity. So, for example, and I haven't studied what the link is. So, for example, with paranoid schizophrenia, it doesn't matter the race or the culture. Paranoid schizophrenics will have paranoia of grandeur. They might think they are Jesus, they are second coming of Jesus. So can you see how that really plays into then our culture of being overly religious? So, for example, I have cousins that I know are mentally unwell, but then literally this person can't function in life, right? Can't keep a job, can't put her own kids through school. But then you have an aunt who will tell you, oh, she said that she has a dream to tell you, she had a vision. And I'm like,
oh, please no.
She had a vision. And I'm like, so there's no understanding that, like, actually some ways in which mental illness manifests is through religiosity. Yes. If someone is telling you they had a vision or God spoke to them, that may actually be a symptom of mental illness. So there's also that lack of understanding. Oh, and before I forget, I remembered the other book that is really good to read about trauma and understanding it. And it's called The Body Keeps the Score. The Body Keeps the Score. It basically talks about how anything and everything that happens to us that's negative, our body remembers it. Our mind might protect us from, you know, and our mind will do that, especially when you're a child. If things are horrific that happen to you, you may forget it, but your body remembers. And that's why people that, you know, go through abuse and stuff, then later on in life have all of these really horrible things that come up.
Okay, I just finished. Let's finish this video and then back to conversation.
The African community is to treat those people who are going to work, including the young people, make them mentally healthy, and get them to produce. We are losing far too many men and women to mental illness and therefore to unproductivity by not treating them for mental illness.
You know, government hasn't necessarily paid enough attention to this, but on another side, it's sort of just general Kenyans and Africans. There's a real stigma attached to going to a psychiatrist or seeing a mental health professional. You know, why is that such a hard barrier to cross?
Partly because of our own ignorance about processes. And as I said before, when you have no information, when you're ignorant, then you assign schizophrenia, you assign depression, you assign any behavior you cannot understand to possession by witchcraft or some other demons. And that's your way of understanding and explaining it. And that becomes the official position. So for me, these are positions of ignorance from which we must remove ourselves.
Dr. Frank Njenga also faces stigmas of his own, being a psychiatrist in Kenya.
I said to my parents, to my friends, to my colleagues, that I'm actually going to start the psychiatry. What's the matter with you? Isn't there anything more sort of medical that you can go into?
Next, Njenga's path and influence.
Nice. Okay, it's interesting what people's superstitious beliefs and religious beliefs, how that then plays on your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your just you as a whole. And so this is going to lead on to my next conversation, right, with yourself, Ruth. You identify as a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
You have been out. I really want to know what was that like, coming out to your family, and also I want you to, I need you to do something for me, and that is one of the reasons why I am no longer religious. One of the reasons why I'm no longer a Christian. I could never identify as one. The fact that the God of that religion, of these religions, is so invested in what people do with their private parts that I cannot align with that. This is a God that creates universes. He creates galaxies. He creates. He's an intelligent designer, right? He's done all that grandiose stuff, and when he's done, he then sits on his throne, and now he's checking out what people are doing with their private parts, right? How on earth do people worship this God, right? And so how can I then subject myself at the mercy of this peeping Tom? Who cares only what I who's poking what inside where? Who's ejaculating on the floor? You know, so I need you to do something for me, Ruth. I need you to speak to the person who's listening to this and is struggling with their sexuality. As far as I'm concerned, I'm for sexual liberation, right? I'm not here to tell you, oh, you can't be this. Listen, I feel like a lot of people suffer with mental health because they're told, oh, you can't be gay. This is somebody struggling with.
Actually, so LGBTQ youth have the highest suicide rates amongst teenagers and young people. And it is literally because of that, because they come from families and cultures that tell them that they can't be who they are. And that is mentally dismantling, you know, especially on a young brain that isn't fully developed. That kind of rejection is really mentally harmful to kids. And it's part of the reason why I'm so open and outspoken as an African is because let me tell you this. In Omaha, where I live, in the small Midwestern city, I already know 3 different Zimbabwean families in the Midwest, in the small Midwestern place, so far away from home. 3 different kids who have a Zimbabwe, at least one Zimbabwean parent, about who are out as LGBTQ. As gay. Just in here in the Midwest, in Omaha, Nebraska. So can you imagine how many more kids out there? You know what I'm saying? Are going to be coming out or need to be coming out, And so I know that just for these kids who are right here where I live, their parents, by knowing me and understand being comfortable for all of these years with my ability to just be myself, that has changed their opinions about their own children. Those children have had a chance to see someone who looks like them or who comes from where their parents come from, who's openly gay and okay with it. That has already made a difference, So that is why it's important. And it's the same with atheism. Like, I was going to make a point that, like, we're talking about how people that are stuck in cultures or people that are back home that never had a chance to leave that culture or to even have a different perspective, they're connected to us through social media. I get a Facebook sends me kind of like, who's
recommendation.
Well, no, they send me like a thing of like who's all viewed my posts and all of that stuff, So it'll be like, out of 48K views in the last 7 days, 60% came from Zimbabwe, 20% came from Nigeria. So this is the impact we are making. You know what I'm saying? So people now no longer have to just be stuck with the opinions of, just the people. We have the internet. And like, I want to also commend you for what you're doing, because it may seem like you're not reaching a lot of people. I'm always surprised when I look at the, when Facebook sends me those things, and I'm like, how in the world are that many people reading what I say? It seems like you're just writing into oblivion. But I think people are hungry for knowledge, hungry for something else, change that works. And people tell me all the time, people tell me of like how much they've changed their perspective, how much something I said has helped them, whether it's parenting, whether it's just accepting themselves, whether it's leaving. I wake up and I just talk about whatever is on my mind. But just because I'm so authentic, and most of the time I'm speaking from an informed place. I've usually read about something before I speak about it. I'm not just speaking from an uninformed place. It's just like I told you with the Bible. I read the whole thing and read it. So no one who is a Christian can argue with me about the Bible, because I've probably read more about the Bible than they have. But we are making an impact in just being able to talk openly about. And of course, we also have to understand, I can do this because I am safe to do so. I would not be safe to speak as openly as I do about my sexuality or religion if I were in Zimbabwe. Absolutely, my life would be endangered. So when we have room like that, when we have that safety, we actually have an obligation to speak up with the freedom that we have, because we wouldn't be able to do it if we were still back in our home countries. People that are there are people like us there, they can't do it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's actually dangerous to be so outside of the box. It is absolutely dangerous.
Can I just quickly read this comment, because this one got me.
Okay.
It's a comment by Steve McRae, manager. My nephew is schizophrenic. I am his guardian. I basically had to cut family off because they were telling him to pray about it. He's fortunate to have a very effective medication. Steve McRae, manager, he's fortunate to have you. Reading that just completely breaks my heart, because most of these people that wrote the Bible, right? Most of these men who wrote the Bible, who were seeing visions, the one who wrote Revelations, right? Example, the one who wrote Revelations, apparently he was off on an island by himself, receiving all these wild visions and things. Nobody thought to check the man. Nobody thought to check, is he all right, before believing these things he called visions, right? When I look at some of the claims of these Bible stories, I'm asking myself, this sounds like the functioning of a brain that wasn't quite all right, right? This person needed some mental health check, some kind of assessment, something, right? But how have they taken the words of this person and just swallowed it all? Apostle Paul was on his way to go and kill the Jews. He was on his way to go kill these people, and somehow he receives this whatever that thing was that appeared to him on his way to Damascus, and somehow automatically everyone's now taking the words of a man who was planning to come and kill you all. They do say that when someone shows you who they are, you believe them the first time, right? How someone who was a killer 1 second now becomes your the one who is telling you how to live your lives. Don't you think?
Yeah, but
that,
I mean, I think we actually have modern day examples of men from the Bible. So if you look at, for example, have you heard of the Jonestown
oh yes,
massacre? Have you heard, like,
Jim
there are
Jones?
all of these cult leaders, right, that have led massive suicides, but that's because people chose to follow this one deranged person. And that's basically, so yeah, reading from the Bible and some of those figures where would be our cult leaders today, because the things that they were saying, you know what I'm saying, and the things that they were promoting, if people were to follow that, it would be, you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting that, like, when people are caught up, there are people who are religious who are like, well, but like, my religion is not, I'm not like, but it's like, actually, it's like varying degrees, right, of like the same thing, so it's interesting how when people are in it, they can find a way to excuse or separate themselves. It's just like Catholics, right? There are Catholics who are like, well, yeah, we had the, sex abuse scandal where millions of boys were sexually molested, but not my priest. My priest doesn't molest. And it's like, people find a way. People find a way to justify or excuse or, say, yeah, I can see how bad it is over there, but actually, or people will say, every time I bring up, just whether it's here or it's in Africa or in the Caribbean, just especially Black pastors, how they use their congregants, how they literally get money out of them. Black people are always quick to say, no, my pastor doesn't do that. My pastor is not scamming us. And I'm like, it's I don't know. But I do know that, like, the more people see people who are saying something different and who are backing it up, with facts, the more people do change their minds. I know that I'm responsible for a lot of Zimbabweans walking away from religion just because of how outspoken I've been, about, my walking away from religion or my sexuality or whatever it is. There's definitely something about human beings that requires us sometimes to see someone else be brave enough to do something for us to, to go in the same direction.
Exactly. There's a question in chat. A Steve McGray manager wants to know, and hey, Kweli Kosh, let's see. He wants to know, where's that comment gone? How to reach Africans. And I think you've just answered. You just answered the question. How to reach Africans effectively.
Yeah. So Africans are interesting because, like, I say a lot of things that are, I think, very hard for Africans to hear because I'm so blunt and straightforward. So I will have posts that no one will touch, like no one will like, no one will comment, but that will have had hundreds of views.
Where are you posting these things? Because
so you have to follow me. Find me on Facebook.
No, it's not on your Instagram. You reserve the best on Instagram.
Yeah, no,
you only show the nice stuff, you and your family.
But you can't write on Instagram. You know,
can you adopt me? Can you adopt me into your family?
I have a lot of kids as it is. But no, you have to follow me. If you follow me on Facebook, I'm very opinionated, and I literally write very long posts on. But anyways, I was saying that, so it seems like, so there's a lot of things that I say, I think, that are hard to digest, but it'll be time later where someone reaches out and says, oh my God, you talked about trauma, and oh, I started going to therapy, and oh my God, the way my life has changed. Or, oh my God, you talked about the fact that you're not raising your kids with gender roles. They all are accountable for the same work. And oh my God, I started doing that. And oh my God, my kids fight less. And oh my God, so people are taking it in, especially, like I said, like, if you're saying things that can be measurable, you know what I'm saying? If you're saying things that are factual and can be measurable, people will listen because they know that what they're doing is not working. You know what I'm saying? Or like, if I talk about domestic abuse and you are in an abusive situation, you may not touch that post, but you know what's happening in your home. And that's going to start, it's a spark that's going to start making you think. So that's what I've discovered happens on social media. So if you want to be someone who starts kind of like imparting onto others what you've learned, or just start talking about it. It may seem like no one is listening, but actually people do. People are reading those things. People are actually paying attention. And it's almost like with all of us, right? Like I told you that it took my first girlfriend to say, oh, you have trauma. No one had ever used the word trauma with me. I had no idea what that was. I knew that I was hurting. I knew that a lot of things had happened to me. No one had ever said that's trauma and there's a way that you can address it and fix it and heal it, until she said something. So it's the same thing. When we introduced a new concept or a new way of thinking or a new perspective, someone who has never heard of it before, it's going to spark something in their own mind to be like, what is this? An interest, right? Like, maybe this is something I need to look into. And that's how change happens, you know? And I always say, the reason why it seems like the West or European countries are more progressive than us, guess what they're doing? They're sharing information all the time. Every expert writes a book in a European country. You know what I'm saying? Everyone is writing a memoir. People are reading this. So there's exchange of information all of the time. And that's why there's continuous progress. We haven't started to do that yet because we also come from cultures. Remember what they say? You can't air your dirty laundry. You can't do this. Without realizing that actually, if I share my story of abuse or of growing up as an orphan, someone else needs to hear this. Yes. I can't just keep the things that have happened to me to myself, because someone else needs to know the path that I've walked, so that if they're in the same situation, they can also walk that path. You know, so we have to also do our way. But some of that also, obviously, like, I couldn't be as outspoken if I hadn't processed and worked through my own traumas and the things that have happened to me. So in order to be able to speak and speak openly and not have any shame about anything, or even get to a place where I realize that there's nothing shameful about the fact that I am not attracted to men. It's how I'm wired biologically. You know what I'm saying? But then, like, you know, for example, my kids and I have all had our genetic mapping done. There are things about myself that I understand. For example, I know that I carry a variant for sickle cell. And I know that, wow, while I don't have it, if I had married someone, you know, there are things that I understand about myself because I've done the science to understand myself a little better. So you can't shame me with this book that's telling me that I'm not supposed to have this sexuality or what. Your book can't even explain to me why I have this pigmentation. It doesn't,
No way.
it doesn't explain to me why my hair is the, but science explains that to me. Literally, like my genetic mapping gets everything right. It tells me the things that are in my genetics that I would have never known. The cancers that I, whether I have genes for cancer, whether I don't, whether I have genes for diabetes, whether I don't. These are things that I know because I've simply done a test to have an analysis of my genetics. How many people in African cultures have done that? So there's a
Guys,
lot.
if you guys have questions for Ruth, now is the time to ask your questions, so that we can start to bring this to a close.
How long have we been talking? I'm not even looking at the time.
Oh yeah, we've been at this for an hour and 50 minutes. So I bet we can go on and on. But no, what we'll do, we'll have to get Ruth to come back. And one of the things I would want you to really get into is parenting as an atheist, because for me it's a learning curve. I've only been an atheist for about 3+ years, going on 4 years, right? But 3+ years thereabouts. And so my 20-year-old son, he's what I would consider a lifelong atheist. He just never, when I used to force him to church, used to, when I would go to choir practice, I'd take him with me, just try and, because
torturing the kid.
I didn't want him to burn in hell while I would be in heaven watching my son burn in hell. You understand? So it was my duty to indoctrinate, to make sure. But however much, just whatever I tried never worked. Right?
He's a smart kid.
In fact, he started footballing on a Sunday, right? And that's created problems between me and my ex, because we grew up going to church on a Sunday. It was you don't, on a Sunday, you don't do anything else. And here he is footballing on a Sunday. Do you know, I went to look for his football manager, right? I went to look for his football manager to go and say to him, we are church going people, sir.
Oh no! Have you apologized to your kid?
Hang on. I went to go meet the man. We're a church going family. My son wants to play ball, but he has to be in church too. What can you do for us? Do you know what the man said to me?
What did he say?
He said to me, I'm a minister of the gospel.
I can minister to him here.
He said, no, I'm a minister of the gospel. He said, but one thing you must know is in the UK, Sundays are the days for football. He said when he started football, he said that's something he had to get on the train, otherwise there was no football for him. So he said, unfortunately, Mom, it's a choice you're gonna have to decide. You're gonna have to decide whether football or church. There's really nothing I can do for you. So we had the agreement with my son, it would be a half and half. 2 weeks football, 2 weeks church. When he comes with us to church, you need to see the look on his face. He is so miserable. Oh my God! While he's in church,
what is it with us as Africans and like just not understanding that like our children have autonomy and they have a right to be happy and forcing them. You know what I'm saying? It's just like with me when I came out, and that's what I didn't understand. I was like, so y'all want me to die miserably because you believe I should be with a man? Like that doesn't make any sense. I'm miserable. What good does it do to force someone into something that doesn't make them happy? The point is that we're supposed to be happy in life. But yeah, let's go to the questions.
Okay, we have some questions. Let's see. Okay, question. Let's see. What are the questions? Oh, it's just someone in the chat. Christ brings a sword is their name. Look at the stars. If you don't believe in anything, Faith is the only way to be redeemed. Redeemed from what exactly?
I see a question from Junebug that says,
where is it?
What ideas do you have to make atheism fun with kids growing up? So
hang on.
Do you see it?
No, I don't see it.
Oh, it's way at the bottom.
Is it way at the bottom? I need to highlight. Before that, I think there's another question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just.
Gosh, this person with all the preaching, they're coming to preach in the chat. Oh, goodness gracious me! And
yeah,
now
there's a
all
lot
I
happening.
see is comments. Oh, sugar. Okay, never mind. I'll look for it. So Junebug asks, the Afro-atheist, what ideas do you have to make atheism fun with kids growing up?
So you don't have to make it a thing, right? So you just so again, instead of going to church on Sunday, have hobbies that you do, whether, my kids are teenagers now, so they have a lot of their own lives and friends and stuff. But when they were younger, we were doing zoo. We were going to the zoo. We were going to the children's museum. We were, you know what I'm saying? We were doing whatever fun, creative, bonding things. We were baking. We were, you know what I'm saying? And that's just the thing. Like, that is what atheism is. It's just living your life. Actually finding happiness in doing things and living every day. So it's not like I had to preach to my kids about atheism. I just lived a life without God. And that's all you do. So you have your kids see you be someone who has friends, who has hobbies, who do, I host a lot, especially pre-COVID, a lot of grill outs with friends. I used to do movie nights. Like I said, I have my own hobbies that I do. I fish, I do all of this other stuff. I have a life. I almost always have a lover. You know what I'm saying? They see me live life. And that is what atheism is. So it's not, we have to be real careful, because we don't want to, walking away from religion, which is a very set thing. Like, you go to church, then you drink the blood of Jesus, and we can't then make atheism be a ritual, right? Atheism is about, who are you? Like, it's interesting now that I have teenagers, right? And kind of just seeing, so for example, my son, he was really into basketball for a while, and then it wasn't working out. And then immediately he, like right now he's all into trading stocks, and he's reading any and every book he can. And he's skateboarding. But that's because they understand that life is about finding what keeps you motivated, what keeps you, passionate. And that's what it is. It doesn't have to be something that has to be preached about. It's just the way of your existence, the way that you live. But in the same token, right, they also see the way that I am in the world. Like, who am I as a person? Am I trustworthy? Am I all of these things that make me, like, that's another thing. Religious people think that we don't have good moral character for some reason. Like, it requires you to believe in God to be a good person. And that's so not true, right? So just the way that I live my life, or my relationship with them, who am I to them? Am I someone who listens? Am I supportive of their dreams? Am I accepting of who they are? Am I all of these things? That is what atheism is to me. It's not, I don't preach it. It's just the way that I live my life without God, without, holding myself accountable, holding them accountable, just having structure and having a way of life that's good without God. Nothing is attributed to God at all. Never are we like, it's all, whether if they do something, they did something. You know what I'm saying? So they get the accolades. I'm not thanking God for this and that. The effort is theirs. If I do something, or whether it's accountability, no, you need to behave better when it comes to A, B, C, D. You need to, you know what I'm saying? So I think we have to be very careful. Don't make it a religion. Atheism shouldn't be a religion. It's just being able to live a full life, full, authentic, free life, without all of these impositions, right? Like, oh my God, girls have to cover up. There's so many rules to religion that it makes life really constrictive. And there's no way that people can really be happy at the end of the day. All of these expectations are just kind of BS, right? It's just kind of living life, everyone figuring out what makes life fulfilling for me, you know. And then if I do that and my kids watch that, automatically they're going to just grow up living life that way too.
I'm going to answer that question as well. You must understand that atheism only answers one question and one question alone. And it only addresses what you believe, right? Now, after that, what you go on to do as an atheist, there really is no rule book that tells you what you should or shouldn't do, right? Now, when I became an atheist, there's certain things I had to do. My son, I had to apologize to him for the times I tried to force the religion on him. And secondly, I thanked him for not buying into, because can you imagine if he had been indoctrinated? It would then become for me a duty to undo the indoctrination, but he had never been indoctrinated. But it was nice to have that conversation with him, because he started to ask me, Mom, he said, can you now understand why I could never understand why people believe the Bible? He said he could not understand why when he's in church, all the adults are listening to the pastor preach from the Bible. They're all nodding their heads in agreement. And he's there thinking, how is this making sense? This isn't making any sense to him. He said, can you now understand it? I said, son, I understand it perfectly. Right. So now, when I do these things I do here, when I'm talking about
someone can't find my link on Facebook. Just Ruth Marimo.
Just your name.
Yeah, just Ruth Marimo.
Okay, you know what? Let me find it while I'm talking. And so with my sons, right? Now, sometimes they'll say to me, Mom, oh, he's always atheist this and atheist video. Atheist, that's the conversation they would have with me. Otherwise, I don't get them involved in anything to do with atheism. I let them just be themselves. I let them do the things that makes them happy, right? I like my younger one, he likes his games, right? But sometimes we might have a like my older son, he was on his game talking with his friends. They were talking about religion. They were asking themselves questions they could not answer. He came down to come and ask me, because he said to his friends, my mom would be able to answer this question, right? So he came down to come and ask me. I forgot the question now, but I told him what I thought was the answer. And he said, Mom, I knew you would know the answer. And he went back, but just to know that him and his friends are having these conversations. And so the atheism thing, it shouldn't even be a subject. You know what I mean? When you're an atheist, you're not out here just thinking, oh, atheism, The reason why I speak about it is because everyone in my family, when I say family, I mean brothers, sister, cousins, auntie, every single one of them is still a Christian.
Oh yeah, that's true for me too. I think,
and they think I'm on my way to hell. They're terrified. They're worried that anything happens to Esther, she's going to hell. So that's the reason why I do this, because I need them to understand that there's nothing wrong with me. There really is nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with your religion, right? So when you say do things fun, I will do fun things, but nothing to do with atheism. The only time I talk about atheism with my kids is when I'm asked, when they come and ask me. Or just the other day, I was asking my 13-year-old son, this was my question to him. What does he think about the flood? Does he think that does he believe in the flood story in the Bible? He said, Mom, there's not enough water in the on the planet to flood the entire planet. He said, no, it's impossible. Just those are the kind of things. That's the only time I might just add
And
this,
also,
but otherwise, it's not
another
a thing.
thing is, our kids have to have their own journeys in life. However,
Oh yes,
I think that a child who doesn't have to go through the process that we've all had to go through, where you were indoctrinated first, and then you have to do literally unlearn and walk away. That's harder. I think if the journey is like, you know what, research all of these different belief systems and religions in the world and see what you think. And, my son was agnostic for a long time until his friend came back from Bible camp, and his friend said, oh yeah, I'm not really interested in having all that much fun right now in this life, because I'm going to have all the fun in my son was just like, this thing is, so you have to let them have their own journeys and their own processes. But family know where you stand and what you believe, and really kind of the way you live your life says it's why a lot of there's this saying that pastors' kids end up pregnant, and because there's a lot to be said about when kids are watching you trying to live a righteous life, but actually nothing translates in their lives. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's better for you to actually live a good life and live a certain way with certain principles, and your kids see that, as opposed to upholding yourself as this, I'm a woman of God and I'm this. Meantime, you don't even have a good relationship with your kids, or you don't have a good relationship with whatever, your partner, or you don't, you know what I'm saying? Kids can see through all of that. So the way we live is really, at the end of the day, what will convince our children, whether our belief systems or the things that we're doing. By the way, when I came out, Africans thought my children were gonna hate me because I'm a lesbian. My kids were none of that is true. That's not how life works at all. Kids want a healthy and happy parent more than anything. Actually, there's that saying that says the biggest burden for a child is the unlived life of their parent, and that is so true. It actually, when our children don't see us living fully, that's actually a traumatic to them. If I had stayed miserable in a heterosexual marriage, my kids wouldn't be who they are. They would have suffered because they would have seen that I'm suffering. And so I think that's another thing that we need to understand, is that we don't get to fool our own children, because they see us every day and they know, the lives that we actually live.
So I'm putting in the chat all of Ruth's links. So Ruth, there are 2 books. One that you're an author of, and the other one, what's that about? Did you just help with writing?
Oh, okay. So I've authored 2 books. I've authored a memoir. It's called Outsider. I think you've got a link to that. It can be found anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, even whatever bookstore you have in your own countries. I think you can order the book if they don't actually have it. And then I've also authored a lesbian erotica. And I actually highly recommend straight men.
Where is it? Where's the lesbian erotica? Where's the link?
It's called Indelicate Things. Indelicate Things. Indelicate. Yeah.
Oh. You know what? If you look, there's what you call the private chat. Have a look.
I see it.
If you can type in there, just type or put the link that you can actually put things in there for me, and I will just get them out and just make sure everyone gets it too.
So Indelicate Things is my lesbian erotica, and I'm part of 23 women who wrote their stories about walking away from religion, and that book is called Women Beyond Belief.
Oh yeah. I put it in the link here, the Women Beyond Belief book.
Yeah, so I think those are the 3 main important ones. We've also, me and my kids have been featured in a book about immigrants in America. called Finding American, and we're also in a book called Pantsuit Nation, which is a book about Hillary Clinton and her campaign. So, but the I would say Outsider is my memoir that basically I wrote about, and I started writing this book when I was in jail awaiting deportation because my ex tried to have me deported when I tried to leave him. So that Indelicate Things and Women Beyond Belief.
There's a question in chat, Ruth. How do you think about death? Does it scare you?
How I think about death is in terms of how have I prepared my children adequately, and that is in terms of like making them independent, as in, and yeah, my kids started doing their own laundry at about 7, started cooking way younger than that. They've been working with me at my cleanings. I told you I have a cleaning business.
Yeah, I know you're an
7 now.
That's another thing. That's another thing, guys. You all need to know. Not only is she an author, not only is she a mother of 5 kids, but how many fur babies do you have? I saw the video.
My girlfriend has a dog. I had a cat as well. Yeah.
You had a cat?
I had a cat. Yeah. Because I have plants now, so I can't do cats. You can't have a cat. Yeah. But anyways, so how I've prepared my kids, but also, do I have life insurance? Do I have burial insurance? What happens to my children in the event of my demise? So if I have those things in place, then no, it's not something that I need to worry about. I mean, obviously, I hope that I live a long life and my kids don't have, long enough to see grandkids if my kids choose to have kids. But if I don't, I have things in place that the things that people worry about in their dying, like how will my kids be taken care of? I've put those things in place so that I don't have to worry about that. And I've informed my kids about that so that they know that if in the event of my demise, they are protected. There is this thing. There is, you know what I'm saying? But also, because I had to come to terms with my mother completing suicide. She was 21 when she did this. I was 5, yes. And then my sister contracted measles when we were being transported to live with an aunt after my mom died. And she died when she was 3. So because I faced losing literally my mother and my only sister as a 5-year-old, I think I've had more time to process the facts of how short life can be more than other people have. So, and I mean, as tragic and horrible as that is, I think it has given me the perspective of like every birthday I spend with my kids. Like my daughter is 18 and that's unbelievable to me. And I don't take that for granted because my mother didn't get to see me past the age of 5, So some things are actually amazing and magical because I had such an opposite experience. So I think I'm able to just like really have so much gratitude, like just even for how far we've come. Like, gosh, I've raised my kids to be 18 and 16. That's huge to me. You know what I'm saying? That's like a lifetime. And I hope that we have more years. But no, death doesn't scare me, I don't think, in the way that it scares most people. I think because, again, I always do, I'm very rational. I'm just like, what needs to be in place? What needs to be taken care of? And I mean, I think if it scares me a little bit, it's just, I know that, of course, for my children, all of them, or friends or whatnot, like losing someone is hard. But personally, I think another thing why I'm not so afraid is that I feel like I live a full life and I've done so for over a decade. I'm like, if I plan a trip, I'm planning the trip. We're going. I'm that kind of person. I don't live anything for like, you know what I'm saying? I actually do everything that I say I'm going to do. So I feel like every day I just kind of like live a very full, happy life. So like I don't think that, so if I died, I feel like I've bedded all the women that I've wanted to bed with.
She said she has bedded all the women she wanted to.
I've
Yikes.
traveled.
Are you sure, Ruth? Are you
What?
sure you bedded all of them? You
No,
haven't.
no,
You
no,
never know what's in your horizon. And
no,
please,
no. Well, but I mean,
don't let your partner hear you. Jesus.
no, oh no, my partner knows. I think
Okay.
everyone who dates me knows my dating history. It's not
Right.
a secret. But I'm just saying this to say that I feel, and even when people have died in my life, I've had someone die young because of cancer, but because they had lived a full life, there was no grief in me because they had just lived a full life. Do you know what I'm saying? It's when people haven't lived full lives, I think, that we are then really burdened with grief and sadness because we know that they had potential to do more and be more, So I think when you're living a full, authentic, happy life, death doesn't become such a scary thing anymore.
I think for myself, I used to be terrified of death. As a youngster, it started off as a child. And this is where my anger and my pain comes from with religion. I was introduced to the concept of hell as a young kid. We were taken to church. We would go and watch hellfire on these large screens at night. We're separated from mom and dad. They're over there watching. We're over here, young kids. So there's no one comforting you. There's no mom's hand to hold on to when you're watching this really scary, scary place. And when they're done with this film, they will tell you, oh, altar call, come and give your life to Christ. If you die in your sleep, where would you go? Well, 'cause when
And
you die, it's
that's
judgment.
really traumatic that churches do that to kids. There are a lot of people that are actually in therapy for their religious trauma because they were traumatized by their religion, and that's a thing. That's a thing. Yeah.
I was. And so when they tell you, come and give your life to Christ, you see me, my sister, the friends in church, we're all out there crying. Young kids, 7 years old, crying to give
Because you
our
don't want
life
to burn in
Christ.
hell.
Why would it's done so deliberately? It's done at night. Everywhere is pitch black. And it's outside and it's so eerie. So, there's just something about how it's done that just gets you. Right? Never mind that it is all just acting. A 7-year-old wouldn't know that that's acting, would you? You would think that it's all real. And so I get back home and I would be afraid to close my eyes and go to sleep because if I die, I would go to that place that I just watched, right? And so I suffered really bad insomnia as a child because the fear of sleeping and not waking up and dying and going to this hell. And so that I was terrified of death.
Oh, it's pretty. I mean, religion can be pretty traumatic. It's interesting. You just reminded me that when I finally I was like, yeah, I don't believe in this. It still took me about 6 months to not pray in my head, like at bedtime. You know what I'm saying? Because you're like, it took me about 6 months to just be okay with just like going to bed and reading a book and closing my eyes without going in my head doing a prayer, of like protect. So that shows you how indoctrinating it is that like you can decide you've walked away and yet like your mind still needs literally months to undo or unlearn this kind of, thing.
So Hoods 360 says, the Atheist, you have an excellent guest today. Can you make her promise to return in the future?
I will.
What say you?
I have had such a great time. I think that there's so much to talk about. Just
Yes.
I think we're new, like as a people, as a culture, and I'm talking about as Africans, we are new to this concept. So while people in other cultures have explored secularism for decades, we're you and I, we are literally like, it's like we're the first generations.
That's right.
At least to be this publicly vocal about it. So there's a lot to uncover there. There's just a lot. And again, we are just kind of still popping up as individuals, and there isn't like a real cohesive kind of like coming together and collaborations. But that needs to start happening. Needs to start happening so that people don't feel alone or don't feel, because there's more and more of us out there, but then it's such a new concept. And like I said, me and my kids are the only ones in my family that I know even remotely, like, everyone else is stuck in, most of us, if you're African, if you're Black and you don't believe in God, chances are you or your immediate family are the only ones, and everyone else in your family is still attached to that, So there's a need for us to actually speak up, and a need for us to have more conversations like this and invite more and more people into these conversations so that, others can kind of see that there's a different way. And either way, there's got to be a different path to life. How can we all, and this is, why are we so monolithic as Africans, as Black people? Why is everything, why should we all live just one way to live life? That's so boring. You know what I'm saying?
They'll say it's culture.
Yeah, culture. But like, we're authentic human beings, like every single one of us.
Culture has to evolve. I've been told, why have you chosen atheism? Why can't you go back to the religion of your forefathers? And I asked the person, what is the religion of my forefathers? Can you tell me? They couldn't tell me, right? You want me to go back to the religion of my forefathers? Okay, please tell me which one.
But why can you not have a choice to choose what you want for you? Why is it that as Africans, my life has to be dictated by my aunt's belief or what she thinks? Why can't I have my own independent way of living and existing that's not connected to anything else? So we have to start promoting authenticity too. Like, it's okay for people to be individuals and choose to live life the way that they want to.
So Hood 360 says, yeah, for atheists, are all the women in Africa as pretty as you too? I might need to get my passport.
That's too funny. I think when we accept that actually there's nothing wrong with us, because that's another thing that colonialism did, right? It told us that we needed to have weaves and straight hair, and there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong. We're told we need to be lighter and bleach our skin. If you look at things that are happening in places like Jamaica, where literally skin bleaching is a trend, like, you've got Black people boiling their skin to change it, or so we have a lot to uncover, a lot to unlearn, a lot to undo.
That's right. So just one, before you go, just one quick video. It's only about 3 minutes long, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
Right. Where is it now? Where's the video? It's gone missing. Oh, sugar, where did it go? That's it. Okay, so right, that's the one right there. Okay, here we go. Right, guys. So just wanted to show people what happens in Africa with people with mental health issues.
This guy's wearing a shackle, huh?
Mm.
Actually, the patient is said to be restless.
He's restless now.
Yeah.
Now that told me money to know of how I met I know.
Você kama ba mangi ka activism everything mo ada sa joke je.
Mm.
Tutu shumaru chagara go do jiwa de se mbati fi rin ma dun mi.
So these people that you're seeing here are people suffering with mental health conditions, or people that this whatever they're going through just isn't explainable, right? They can't explain it away with it just seems strange, and so they take them to churches or to mosques, right? Instead of taking them, because the hospitals don't have the facilities to take care of mental health patients, and so these people are chained up like this so that they're not, of course, running away, or I don't know. Just what? Let's continue.
It's not good. Human being. It's like yeah, pick your one in ọgbà ẹ̀wọ̀n. Like this is my child, all my family. I'm not happy.
She be somebody that she can help people before, but when her sickness starts, people run away from her.
So there are misperceptions that they are caused by evil spirits, demons, or other supernatural forces, right?
I am a mother of a child with autism. They said I was a witch. If I touched him, maybe his condition would be worse.
Kò sí ènìyàn máa lọ kọ́ máa dún ní ilẹ̀ ẹlẹ́ ẹ̀ tẹ́ bá ti gbọ́ sáà pé sẹ́ni ẹ̀dán bí a ṣe ń lọ ìyá trace bí sẹ́ni yẹn ló lè bá wọn tí wọ́n bá wà.
I believe say that psychiatry it will work for her that time, but there's no money to took her there.
It is not easy for an average Nigerian to afford mental health care services.
Okay, one thing you should know is that those people you're seeing chained up like that, they're either those are church owned or mosque owned places. Those are not hospitals at all. Those are places that they've been taken because they've been told, okay, we'll pray for them and they'll be well in no time. So yeah, that's just the state of mental health in Africa and in lots of places. Now, it's starting to get better, right? Ruth, would you agree that it's starting to get better? Is Ruth still there? Ruth, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm sorry about that. My
It's
kids
okay.
are trying to talk to me, so I had to mute for a second.
We're gonna let you go soon. So
yeah.
I can imagine they want you.
I think it just depends. I know, for example, in Zimbabwe, there's actually a documentary. We have one psychiatrist. Again, same situation. Like I think that was what Kenya. We showed the video. We have one psychiatrist who's like the main psychiatrist for like the whole country. He has a documentary out. I think it's called The Friendship Bench. I think there's a TED Talk as well. Oh, that's another thing. I've also done. I have a TED Talk. You can.
Oh, you do?
Yes, you can
Where
find
is
it
your
on.
TED Talk?
Yeah, it's called The Complexities of Being a Multiple Minority. It's on
Wait,
YouTube.
hang on. It's on YouTube. Say that again. The complexities.
Yeah, well, if you just Google my name, it should come up.
Okay,
The Complexities of Being a
Oh
Multiple
my
Minority.
goodness, this woman. Oof. Okay, I know what I'll be watching when I'm done.
Yes, but there's a Zimbabwean psychiatrist who has a TED Talk, and it's called The Friendship Bench, because he started to train grannies, like grandmothers, to counsel people with mental health issues in communities. That way, you know, they don't have to go to an actual psychiatrist, or, you know. So there are people like that that are trying to make a difference, but it's such an overwhelming issue, right? Especially when you have so many other people that are saying, no, they should be prayed for if you pray hard enough, or there's this thing, you know, they shop for different pastors. They didn't get the answer. Oh, you found it.
I did. Oh, listen, hang on. Just hang on. Just hold on there. Just hold on. We need to hear this. Look at you. Ooh.
The very circumstances of your existence and biological makeup were punishable, and laws were created to make who you are a crime. By the time I was 5, I had lost my mother to suicide.
Oh my God. Okay. You're not going to make everyone can watch this when we're done.
No. That's all I'm playing. I'm going to put the link to it in the chat.
Okay.
Everyone go and watch it. I'm definitely going to go watch it. It's only 11 minutes long.
Yeah.
It was
basically
7 years ago. This was.
Yeah. So it was,
wow.
You know, it's like my whole life in 11 minutes, basically, is what that is. But I was saying, I brought that up because I was talking about the Zimbabwean psychiatrist who also has a TED Talk called The Friendship Bench, where he talks about just kind of like the astronomical issue of mental health in Africa. But then that, you know, you juxtapose that to like this belief, this religious belief that, like, you know, you've got one person who's like, medicine and therapy will work, and we need to do this. And then you've got thousands that are saying, I'm a miraculous healer. If you know what I'm saying? So it's such it's a hard one. And I don't know, you know, because I've been outside of my country for so long, it's hard for me to even try to comprehend what it will take to kind of change either the healthcare system or change the belief system. And, you know, we also have the privilege, I have the privilege of access, right? Because I live in America. I have a therapist. In fact, almost all the teens have a therapist. All my teens have therapists. You know what I'm saying? So we have access and privilege. And so and I don't know, like, had I not left Zimbabwe, would I be where I'm at? Whether it's like my evolution on religion or sexuality, it's hard for me to say, because I don't know, because I understand your culture does have such a, you know, which is why it's important for those of us that have the freedom to speak and the platforms to do that, because we can reach other people that wouldn't otherwise have, you know, kind of like the means to hear differently. But I don't know. I think it starts with, you know, individuals like us, one by one, kind of just promoting, you know. I'm sure in Europe, it had to have started like this 2 centuries ago, right? There was a European who was like, actually, atheism makes more sense. And then now you've got entire European countries that are entirely secular. You know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes it is about just spreading knowledge so that people, because ignorance, you know, if people are ignorant and you don't, and no one teaches you or educates you to think differently, you know, you have no choice.
Okay, I can hear the pots and pans. I think that is the cue. That's the cue for
I think
Mom.
Mom,
you've been on there for too long. I need to get my jobs done, and so we need to respect. No, please let them carry on.
She can hold on for a second.
Oh no, please no.
Yeah.
We're wrapping this up. So what I've done, guys, I've put the links to her books in the chat. I've also put her Facebook links well, the Facebook link in the chat as well. The question is, are you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter, but I'm not as active. My most active platform is Facebook. Facebook is my, and even Instagram, I'm literally like, that's not my most active platform either. So Facebook is the best place to find me. That's where I share all my opinions or my books that I'm reading or whatever I'm doing. Facebook is, the place to find me.
Looks like your Instagram is mainly for your family and your you show more of your personal life on there.
Yes,
so
yes,
I wouldn't be putting that link. Yeah, of course not.
Well, no, I mean it's public, so people can follow me there as well.
Oh, I can put it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Might as well do that then.
I think once you write a memoir, your life is kind of like out there. You're just kind of like, oh well,
Okay, and I was going to say something. Okay, so my very first encounter with you was your podcast that you did with there's a lady. You did something with.
I think it's called I am African podcast.
That lady didn't even know anything about atheism. It was such I listened to that conversation. You did a fantastic job, but the lady who was the one, it was her podcast. She was a Christian, and it just goes to show that atheism for a lot of Africans is it doesn't even exist. I was told only last week that it is impossible for me to be an African and be an atheist.
It's a very new concept. It's a very new thing. But for every society and every culture, it started with one person, somebody, so it's okay that it's new, but it's good that we do have a way to reach others and talk about it and just be ourselves. So eventually, like I said, I think you and I's children's generation are already going to be different, know, and that's where the hope is. And sometimes the things that we're doing now, we're just planting seeds for the future generation, if they can deal with less and suffer less than we did, then we've kind of done our best.
Right. Okay. Well, guys.
And I will be back. You and I will be in touch. And
absolutely.
I will absolutely be back because I do think that we have more to talk about for sure.
Oh yes, absolutely. But I tell you, the reviews in the chat, it's been amazing. Someone said it was D. D says, she says, "Wow, this chick does it all."
I think that I'm a doer, so I'm always multitasking. I'm always doing, a lot of things all at once. So, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to do that. I'm glad that I can do all of these crazy things like write eroticas and
that I need to purchase. I need to go purchase that one, of course. Hoods 360 says, "Wow, a TED Talk. This lady is kicking all types of ass." Paulie says Ruth should connect with Nikki, beat the cult. Oh yeah, Nikki has started a YouTube channel recently. How nice!
I will find Nikki.
She's one amazing person, but her main platform is Twitter.
Okay, all right.
And she's doing an amazing work on Twitter, but she's recently started a YouTube channel. So yes, that should be great.
Okay, I know people want me to start a podcast or something like that, and I'm like, I don't know when I would have the time, but it's something that I am considering in the future for sure.
Okay, it is quite time
consuming.
Yes, it is. It is. So. Yeah, but you know what? As long as you're occupying a space somewhere, as long as you're vocal, as long as you're putting your face out there, because one of the things I had to ask myself, do I want my face out there? Right? But how else would we get this message out? How else can we tell Africans, especially? Sorry, guys.
And that is one thing
I'm biased. I'm biased because the African people need to hear about this.
Well, but also
So,
like Africans are not going to listen to a white atheist because they don't feel like, they're like, of course you can do that, you're white. It's just like even with the whole homosexuality thing. They're like, of course white people can be gay, but you as an, so there is something different about people do need to hear from people that are like them in order for them to believe that something is actually true or real and it can happen. You know, there is this othering that we do where people are like, of course you can do that. You're not, you know, you were raised in a different culture. So to see someone who was raised in your culture who looks like you be like, actually, you know, I'm doing this and I'm fine. You know, in fact, I'm great. You know, that makes the difference because what it does is it removes the fear. So for example, there were people that obviously probably prayed for me when I came out 14 years ago, who are some of my biggest fans and supporters now, because time has shown them that the sky didn't fall. In fact, I'm a great mother. My kids are amazing. So their fear has been diffused because the fear they had over time, they realized that that fear was unwarranted. And that's also another reason why we have to be out and transparent and outspoken, because if people can actually see that their fears don't make any sense, then they kind of believe, you know. But everyone is going good night. We gotta go.
Right. And just lastly, last thing, there was something you said, right? The people, when you came out as an atheist, when you came out as a lesbian, the people who looked at you and said, oh, you're good for nothing, oh, the death threats, or there's something wrong with you. When you compare your life with them, a lot of these people now, the disparity, you're doing a whole lot better. Your kids are doing just so amazing.
It's measurable growth.
People measure it, and you can measure it. You can see, you know, the people that, you know, these were people that you brought over to the US, and look at you where you are today. So I want to thank you. Thank you for the space that you hold. Thank you for your, you know, putting your voice out there. And thank you for leaving that marriage. Thank you for doing that.
I thank myself every day for that. That was
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for leaving that marriage. Thank you for living your truth, right? Because of you, someone will be inspired to live their truth. And for that, I'm proud of you, and I appreciate you. Appreciate what you do. So, Ruth, thank you very much. I'm so glad that you're not just the face on Instagram.
No, thank you so much. And nice. I like to say that sometimes when you choose yourself, that is the beginning. You know, so like in a lot of ways, I feel like my life just started 14 years ago with me coming out as a lesbian, with me when I chose myself, that was the beginning of my life. So that's another thing and literally not a single thing that anybody said was going to happen that was bad. In fact, it has been nothing but good, because when we're authentic, we attract all the good things. You know, we attract our tribe. We're going to find the friends. We're going to find, you know what I'm saying? I'm hired. My business is hired because I am a minority lesbian woman. You know, so that the very things that people said were gonna work against me actually are some of the reasons why I do so well. So it's just that we come from ignorant, uninformed cultures where people don't understand how things actually are supposed to work or how they work. But thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to being back and talking more about anything. I'm really passionate about parenting. As you can see, this whole crew here.
Yes, beautiful family.
See how I'm the smallest one.
Oh, no, you're very tiny compared to them. They're all just, they're like trees, and you're just there like very tiny.
Yeah. But let's do this again. Thank you so much for talking to me. And
you're welcome.
Thanks for listening in, everyone. This has been so much fun.
All right, guys, please don't forget to like the video, give it the thumbs up.
I will be sure to share.
in the comment section, and we will have Ruth come back again very, very soon. All right, guys, you all take
Have a
care, and
good
I'll
night.
see you all tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Do you have a moment? In this very second, I know